Ta spreur. Because yung sewa de gong yin, kani songwa yin, gupa kante yo, ke lo ju kapin robo ji yo yin. Tiala tongbo te xio seba la, te ngaro me sebo me bala, me shi jika. Ancho yabo mogo bala, te ne, ancho go me hin keso. Kashi dra yabo me bala te ne, sunsav yi, so. Ripa sebo me bala te ne, sawa kedo, kubi ki yin tong ne, te ngare, le do yo.
Sometimes he just surprises me totally. Today I'm going to introduce our topic by speaking about the whole idea of fundamental prosperity, what it is, why we need it, how we can acquire it, how it degenerates, and so on. And in explaining this, I'll be referring to history and also to legends. In preparation for addressing this important topic, because my eyes are unclear, I have put on glasses. Because my ears aren't that great, I've put on a hearing aid. Because my voice has become very soft, I'm wearing a microphone. And because my mind feels somewhat torpid, I've had a good cup of coffee.
Mumbo pe donji ke tamba pe nimbo tawadi tana taji yoba donte nore tila tene chisa kepa kashi ga te demba mare sonji sonde demba re te pai mare pai membe jinsin de kansana sonji ga long tembe gende de don Chiba Tambano, Jupu Loji Mandosega, and Getcha Kamunoa Moyoris. Yanayon, the Songo Kaptaba, Mus Jena, Payin the Gambika Tonchi, Segua, Pemase, Gamba Mombo, Gamba Rilla, getting a de Mombo. This super Chiba Tambano. Sanega Samachumbo, Monetrege, Jupalatene, Sonji Sonde, La Loa Meba, Nasoyan Bada, Son Castle, Mon Shi Tabaton, Do Tabaton Guris. Di Casala, Papa Genes on you don Jabojumbo, not to say, Nila, Sonji girl. Lonting to Kanawaris. Kandajanawaris na Tikasala Pete Chapa Chagyo Sene Rutamji te Konra Shungtamji te So Tetamji Tongachi Kadala Chaga Konsanga Yukachi Yoris Tanala that Landriga Travari Nidon, Socia Chinega Mato, Maison, Tandrola Saba, Savaneo Mare. Tensatomba Giores. Because of the Sonji Pete Chapo Church and the Label Papa Genes Cheronga, the Yin, 동 제선 포모드마 니혀 네 윤거이 손에 온가 까노아리스 대까노아 때네 드레 바바체네서 온주도 저부처모 논두생이 치티스페네 그렇다운지 자신노세가 누가가 매운가 봐 샤. 될 때는 소통시되다 다다 컴바고 저 자가고 여도 마장나고 여 주주 공부서가 다 대체네 마 연수노다 트립 살리데 토마 농제레스 존초가 대노 제발라 상다 마세 다네 파파치네세 롱근데서 현가연바 손지지롱등가도 마세 대 공르겐 희겐바연 비전생기 이 산네들라 이 주지 공부도 바페리스 아기투데 마도 돈주거리 있잖아요 말이지 다 수고 논었다는 거로 균내거래 요사리지 들르데네 traul네베 숨모 뭐 대단고마저 제선도 못바리 넘발라는 거로 숨고 뭐지요리 다다 수보서 다다는 레그레요 근데 pomo지요리 드는 나게 말랑도 가서나 백견된 선남세리 다란라 거로 지알랭고 베게 레바나게 견된 선남나 때네 대코니 펜사 토시근 레바레 든 레바레발라 때네 교통고 수무가 레이던리 페나 투마 방가제서 왔다바 든 보고 몸보 페리요 보그레기리 어 텔라테네 tane tanda tu sonju sumba kinesa nam te no rom nam do sumoni la pe poco podon pomo pe ma sei pas mon père mon bon père ande ate so kyong che mo lending da bote tu sonju sumba kon lo re was kong pe ma sei pas donga chimbo poco to so maso so个大学学吧，有人登记早晚的没，对的呢。讲这个注意今年是人把那天呢，讲不得来先讲了，别的，别呢在今年是啦，他拿了被刚刚进步，刚刚进步哟，那个那个我个什么都变成。레바 라 때네 배 무슨 봐 보고 못 보여 보도 보면 보고도 써나 희사와라는 라동도 하긴다고 배 얼바좀 뭐 희사 보인다 저동 그 야고를 레이스마가 로지리 야나요 공tro치알라 라페나세 라미노 긴다고 that's the reason. She never take. Let me know you can do. Then you don't go Tanda Kongota, used to get me and a lot. Thinking someone may be using a tiny to look me on the township. Don't know ye. Go to some German roy matter. Go me to the wrong Chongo. Tundruga 동하다요. 뒤때는 건도 사약은 thinking. 싸워는 매비전 생각되네. 그 여러 노인지요. 여러 노인들고 기니 세강고 전화상요 소지 매박들이 여러와. 뒤 노인 동하요. Tilate Kongo Tanda, Dunga Dong, Sanga Dunga, Tantin Beba Donga, the Sutiana, Nyawa Noji, Chikon Donga Ship, Nyongo. Tilate Ta Papa China the Cheji, Kong Sawate, in a non-dream palatene. Tilate Consana, Peb, Tapte, Kandayona, to Jizroki, Genesis, show me porridge. Tipo la tene, Papa Genesis, oh, Genesis, say, money contradicty, Papa Genesis, tigre, then to jig, on the Kutravatella, Kandana Nomori. Chigta, Trujabo Chiga, Lebanyans, Chigita, Peguyutusama, Pardon, Pomo, that is a Sawo, Samala, Sabo, Mobonon, Doma, Sumbuga, in Basong. Tilted a pig, young dog, Doma Sumburis, and a pig, Jimmy of your told it. The two done the Sawatiris. Sumoyan Basons, Sumboga, Molate, and Sawayan Vigency, Domba Mabo, Sumagarayan. The Alatane, Kawajin Jigatane, Shinkam Te, Chitu Jabodon, Rasumoni Latine, Tekondoa make Rick, Mumpe, Doa Mumbuga, Mumpe Latine. Sonji Temba, Nimbu Tawa, Tawa Sip, thinking to Guyores, Trabachi, Tandeka, Cherose, Sayamina, never now so changing, Sete, Chorosos, Cholatan, Chigit and a Pogot, Choronala, yeah. Come, Mena.
Daba the Soya Nepajo, Conso get the Chabet de Sodrick, Ekachari. At one time, the Buddha, attended by a vast assembly of Arhats and Bodhisattvas, taught at Elephant Mountain in Nepal. Now, I mention this specifically where it was because since that time, Buddhist historians, Rinpoche said, have disputed the location at which the Buddha gave the prophecy of which I'm going to speak, saying that there is no evidence of there having been a great or extraordinary community, including extraordinary holy beings in that part of Nepal. In response to that objection, I would point to the evidence of the present, where Nepal has basically become a nation that consists of whole cities or towns of monasteries, including thousands and thousands of monastics, many of them no doubt extraordinary and holy beings. So I think that had the Buddha not blessed it in that way, by speaking this prophecy, this would not have occurred in the present day. In any case, at this location, the Buddha gave a prophecy about Tibet that was addressed principally to two of his disciples, the Bodhisattva of Avalokiteshvara and the great divine king Vaishravana. Now at that time, the Buddha said the land that we now call Tibet was uninhabited by either humans or any other mammals. There were probably, Rinpoche said, fish and other water creatures because it was largely covered by frozen lakes and snow-covered high mountains. There were, according to the Buddha, beings that were spirits, what we would call spirits or ghosts or demons, but no humans or land animals. The Buddha indicated in his prophecy that, first of all, it was time for them, for Avalokita and Vaisravana, to melt the ice in Tibet, literally. And in that prophecy, he specifically told Avalokita that the land of Tibet was his realm, in the sense not only of his dwelling, but also his responsibility, a responsibility and dwelling that he would share with his fellow Bodhisattva Aryatara. So initially, Avalokita and Vaisravana went from there to Tibet, and Vaisravana used the highly reflective mirror, which you can see he wears over his heart as part of his armor and jewelry, to reflect the light of the sun and melt enough of the ice so that it could become habitable by mammals, including humans. And that is said to be the origin of the basic topography of Tibet as we know it today, what was called the 4 rivers and 6 ridges, which therefore are credited with having this miraculous origin stemming from the Buddha's intervention and prophecy. Now, because the Buddha had predicted or prophesied to Avalokita that Tibet was his realm, and which was also something that Avalokita already knew himself, he emanated in that land in the form of a monkey. Now, there were no other monkeys living there. In fact, there were no other animals of any kind at that time, other than a fish. But as I said, there were kind of demons. And so the monkey ended up hooking up with a rock demoness, or Rakshasi, who was an emanation of Aryatara. By which I mean, Rinpoche said that she was an emanation of Tara, but if you looked at her, she would look like a pretty fearsome Rakshasi or demoness. Now, their union was really the result of their previous aspirations and the common merit of all of the future people of Tibet. And it had an extraordinary result. There was a result that we still enjoy today. One thing about Rakshasis, as we know from the case of Hariti with her 500 children, is they are extremely fertile. So when this monkey and this Rakshasi came together, they had innumerable offspring, innumerable children. And this was wonderful because it created the basis of the Tibetan people, and the basis also of Avalokita's continued presence and blessing in that land. But it created a major problem for the monkey. Because he was, although he was Avalokita, he was also somewhat overwhelmed by his spouse's fertility. And he had the problem that he had to support all of these countless half monkey, half demon children And so because he was an emanation of Avalokita, he had the ability to go to the head office, to go to the Potala, and speak to Avalokita. So he did, and he went to see Avalokita, and he said, as a result of previous karma, I have come together with this Rakshasi. And we have somehow produced innumerable children. And these children are remarkable, as one would expect, given their parentage. Said they're as smart as gods or devas, which Rinpoche says probably came through initially that may have come because of the parents being emanations, the father being an emanation of Avalokita and the mother being an emanation of Tara. It could also, Rinpoche said, have something to do with monkey cleverness. They're as smart as the gods, but they're as nasty as asuras. They're competitive and vicious and always angry, quarrelsome. Because there are no resources, nothing to make clothes out of, they run around naked like animals. So they live like animals. They're as smart as gods, as nasty as asuras, and they live like animals. There's nothing to eat in that country at that point. So they're as hungry and thirsty as pretas. And this is all making me so miserable that I feel like I'm in hell. And so he said to Avalokita, this situation means that I am experiencing the sufferings of the 6 states all at once. Would you please, Avalokita, do something about this, if possible? So that's where we left off.
Oh, yeah. The Minyo Choyon Dong, Kusa, flying of the jazz. Totikas, Kusa, and Kanjime Ballad, lying of the jazz. Don't lion of the Suati. Tazab, Rinpoche, Sachi, and Pichogmari. Constant number Nuki Johnson, Tata Rabda Swan Lounge, Sugar Nasayo, Lion Nazamuneri. Till it is taken some Momba Sonjiga, Tembaton T. Jinju, Mombo, Pejuba, say Sugar. Take your tongue, Tab Kabati, Pig, Jacob the Chorney, Momba Maji, Pada. Tenande sinking the men also Junting, Sonolantiani, Gabba Sayondo, Mudutangi, Chegalons, Mombo Yunji, Sanjana, Junting, Sonogreg, Sonon, Consona, Junolongela, Soba Chegalons. Unizaki, True Jabola, that other Shuva gang, tickets to Kanamore. True Jabug, wrong the table, lane tab, Nupato, Yente, Yomares. Tilatine, Ro Potalane, Tane, Anjungu Jabot, Tatana, Dawdon, Zundra, Nupa, Tatava, Chigdo, Lane Tama, Ta Lamasananda, Giving Nanda, Sananda Dembache, Congress, Chin to help him. The Manju Jabotiga, the young lingo is. The young so take a sick on the Dagana, Judo, Nubaton, Yantin Terala, Jimmy W. Young Series. Tati Lambichi the Tombo like the Sena wants to eat. Then Cabo, Tangan Sheba County, then get no Gigi in Satis, Cabo, Chimboji, Tang. Tea tended the name, Sonja Judon, Gande, Loss of a crucial cups of your married, Monja Yabo Ronki, Chiaton, Thousand Nubala Tene, the shape of the Chibo Big Jachimboji, Sham. There is Manchon Ronke, Sala, Ta, Jodonga, New Courage, Da, Sambayava, Druya Bajel, the Landas and Mentagores. Telatane, Targabo, Mabo, Sebo, Mombo, Jonga de Tananga. These then taught in Dalakin City, so the Rinpoche, Onipa, Mukabul, Melonche, Taught. Take on the Sagati, Nadate, Ugoris. You may, then a congo shane, Kuyas against, Kuyas against and the young Peruki, say on the Ruki, say, Tayan Badras, say again, that they pay Karuki Chunjon Mayamba, the Triodon, Rosumo, Triggin, Jaboto Chepala, Kangato, Dongaya, Patetamji, Nason Zenite, Mazip, Onge, and Ode Chimbo Purs. Ode Chimbo Pate, or Jukadon, Juni Bade, and Potala, Musjuba, La Tujimbo, Kinezig, Salando, Ni. The Manchon dog, the Namog, as the Triodon, and the Hibano, Gitadog, the water of Mazipa, Ode Pubaton, some Jotunga paid the Meiji Chotney Zone, Manji Bada, Tanala, that's a jingering, Megarin, the Menasaba, Jinting, Sunam Tedo. Tamji get to be pages nole. Tata melon don, Dada Gele. Is it true? Is it the count true? Resena, Toma, Tane, Somba, Toinkabo, Shepake, La Somba, Shinkam true. The true go be in Gardisena, La Somba Sade. You think a Mipo cigarettes, Mipo Mune de Mare de Yanakoronge, the Romper, Tomji, the Koronga Podon Pomoi, Sombaga, Cogatella, Podon Pomon, Yin, Kitane, Samba Chimbayores. Tell us Somba in the Sambadon, Sade, Yetin Samba, a Sonji Samba, Noji Samba Mares, Jetin Panoji Sambale, Corchia Yo Mare, tell her. Samba Yores, the song here, the Samba Yakabo Tele, the year, Trouble, the La Somba Nega, Longi Tomji, the Anchipio Tennis, paid the one days. That the alarm was a consonant, Sumba, some Javne, to Bomo Guinness. Zongo Yorova, Titabu Munjigo Mares. Count is Sena, the than a million days, Lai Panchon, like Longidays, Titam J units, Musuk number Will Mares. Is Carboti, Tanda Shubano again, pay your pony, you take and thinking, Senam Secondandra. You secondandra, no patam chitare, pe conne conlea, penne, yendores. Eldene, on cabo chit, trune, the lie along chite, pe do yonari. The Latine, Maumpa, then pay your dog, you tap your nail, this then the leg contour drag, Panjo to Longi, Bemi Landru the Consana, you don't know by one day, Tombo, lie you somebody, Melon to eat, and the Hanjo Jabu, Tingan Sando, Morgan Nupaton, Tmitasi Hawaiian. Consana, Mongba Yuga, Jinting, San Lonas about somebody is true. Oh, yeah, Tennessee.
Incidentally, Rinpoche said it's because of the legendary origin of the Tibetan people that we refer to ourselves as the red-faced Rakshasas of Tibet because of the legendary descent from a Rakshasa on the Rakshasi as our first mother. Now, in response to the monkeys, I'll just call him the monkey, since he's the only actual monkey in this story. So the monkey's request, Avalokita said this. Said, king of monkeys. Well, he can't be really a monkey king because there's no other monkeys, but he's the father of all these other kids. So anyway, Avalokita said, Monkey King, listen well. All of your children and other descendants are red-faced Rakshasas. You, a monkey, are my blessed emanation for that snow-covered land. You can also think of this Kawachen as meaning the Himalayas, so you can say Himalayan region. And so he's answering the question of, well, what are we going to eat? What are we going to wear? He said, as food, eat rice and flour and various things. If you're thirsty, drink the water that flows there. And then he says something peculiar that Rinpoche commented on. He says, as clothing, wear the raiment of the gods. Now, normally when we think of the raiment of the gods, we imagine very fine silks and fine fabrics like that. But Rinpoche said, actually, the raiment of the gods, most properly in Buddhism, refers to the three robes of a monastic, which we also refer to as godly or divine raiment. So in fact, Rinpoche said this is basically a prediction of the future of the descendants of the Monkey King, producing a large, extraordinarily large proportion of male and female monastics. So you can understand, as indicated by that, you can also understand much of what Avalokita says to the Monkey King in this conversation as a prediction of gradual developments in Tibetan history. He says, take as siddhi the fortune and prosperity of this kalpa. Now, kalpa in this sense can also mean, Rinpoche said, his destiny or his share. And so it also indicates the fact that through the common or merit of the people of Tibet, then and in the future, there was going to be a tremendous siddhi, as you'll see in a moment, both of cha, which means good fortune, and yang. Now, Rinpoche paused here to define the word yang because it's what we're talking about. Often in English we translate it as prosperity, but yang, it means more than financial prosperity. It means well-being of all types. Young, Rinpoche said, has connotations of nectar, essence, nutritive power, the good stuff, the best, the very finest thing of its type, and so on. It's all, everything good, everything wanted. So that was initially what Avalokita said as instruction in answer. Now, in order to implement what Avalokita had instructed, the Monkey King brought back from the Potala a person who is not named, but it's called a king of Mantradharans. Now, a Mantradharan is a type of Vidyadhara or Tantrika who has the actual ability to transform the external world. Literally, Mantradharan means mantra holder. And it was this Mantradharan who initiated the actual summoning of prosperity, which we still perform today. And that is why this story is being told. First of all, Mantradharan set up a shrine or offering altar, which he covered with white fabric, because this white fabric is called the surface of the gods. It's the color and because it's associated with cleanliness and so on, that is most attractive to the prosperity of the gods. And then he set out vast or extensive offerings to the three jewels, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And Rinpoche said, well, obviously there wasn't anything there at that point that he could use, so he must have produced these things miraculously. And then he began to wave an arrow. Now this arrow was made from bamboo, cut so that the shaft was square, which represents increase or enrichment. It had three sections to it, 3 joints, and attached to, and 4 feathers. Now it's held upside down to represent the transformation of violence into peace and prosperity. And attached to what's now the upper end, the end with the feathers, is 5-colored silk, and especially in this case, a mirror of silver, a reflective mirror. The silver, Rinpoche said, is significant. It is second only to gold as a precious material, and it also represents this purity, such as the purity of the white cloth and so on. And then this Mantradharan king began to summon prosperity, which he did in a loud voice, beginning with the word kuye. And kuye, Rinpoche said, you can understand it as basically saying, prosperity, come here. And so through his repetition of mantra, through his waving of the arrow silk, and through the blessing of Avalokita, whose instructions and prophecy to the Monkey King were being implemented, and Rinpoche said a fourth element to this has to be the common merit of the future people of Tibet. Through all of this, prosperity began to descend, and this is how it happened. First of all, the mirror which he waved, reflecting the brilliant light of the sun, the light rays reflected by the mirror reached the realm of Brahma. Now, Brahma is the highest god or deva with whom we are likely to have any kind of contact. We call him the All-Father of the world. In fact, of course, he is not the creator nor the forefather of all beings, but he thinks he is. And because he thinks he is, he loves all beings like his own sons and daughters. In fact, we call him Brahma, pure and complete, because his love is greater than that of any being other than a bodhisattva or Buddha. So therefore, Brahma really wants to help. So when the light reached the realm of Brahma, it caused all of the wealth and prosperity and possessions of the devas to descend into this world, in fact, into the land of Tibet. But this isn't, like Rinpoche said, this isn't like ordering something online or actually going to a store and buying it. Do you remember that? That was something we used to do. And he said it's not like you place an order and then something comes as stuff, because this is not coming from one place in the human world to another place. It's coming from the Deva realm. So this prosperity didn't arrive as packages. It arrived as white light. So all of the prosperity of all the devas, starting from the four great kings all the way up to Brahma, was emanated or collected in form of a massive white light. And that descended into Tibet through the intervention of this Mantradaran king and through the blessing of Avalokita. And Rinpoche said that is how the land of Tibet, which at that point, up to that point, had really been like a preta, a realm with only spirits and nothing to eat or wear, gradually came to become like a realm of the devas. So that was the beginning of the prosperity of the devas or gods coming to Tibet.
Tētāpa pañcōtō lōngchī yōnggō jinsīn kāngri sēnā kiawa ngā jimbā chīmbō tōngwē tī jimbīn rēbē tē ngā tā shiorī. Chidōng kō lōrī kāyānā pañcōtō lōngchī chīmbō yōnā yōng tī tsōwō tē lōyō kā jābō tsūndā rīñchīn sēwā tē rī. Tsūndā rīñchīn sēkawā tē kāngri sēnā kōrōng kōngkō lā Rinpoche rintong to rawa, kong kong gupa to kong depa tangi, betsu mo gupa Rinpoche telling gori. Tela tene manjo jepu ode tong, ye karbo te lui lentru de, lui ga longje yong, te ye de su dune, pelu su peri. Pepa le, tene lui ga longchi, pedo wone, pedo londrawa, tene sais. Tatene, tate kapsala, tene pera, lai longchi zon, longchi, zemi tene meda te, kandi sona, te mari. Kap tere soma tong, tene karba yataka kapsala, te longchi teta ni de bari. Tene sais. Tene yese, Tanda manju jebu kan tata to melong le te panong concentrate. Panong concentrate ne par nyingi longchi pewa le. Ni se wa de ta da ngon zu yu la ge zo se go yi bian na nian xi tong la se wa da. Ni ji ma jia pong ra se wa da. Ni ge men da go ri. Ni se wa de bi jin de la bin da ba yin bi jin se la de ni ri. Kong zu ri ngu ne jian na ne jin ge ri. Ne jin ri yin ba la de ne kong zu la pe. Gong xi jia qian bo. Si mi xi ba. Pe ma dong qian bo yo ri. Teletene tata ngāche jabuge nādagu yōshin mēpa tōng yēsi te tere nīng sōsum chūne nīng jī lōngche tamchi pē lōne pē nīng tōng rāwa tēne sēyīs.
Now, the reflected rays from the mirror did not only head upward to the realm of Brahma, they also reflected or radiated downward to the realm of the Nagas. And the reason for this is that the Devas are not the only prosperous beings in the world or the universe. Nagas are also prosperous. And Nagas are prosperous primarily because of their previous karma. Those who are born as Nagas are generally those who in previous lives have been extremely generous, and as a result are born in a species which is remarkable in its prosperity. Rinpoche said that, however, although all Nagas enjoy a certain degree of remarkable prosperity, among them the Naga king, who's called Jewel on his crown, or Jewel on crown, is the most prosperous. And his extraordinary or even unique prosperity comes from the fact that, as his name reveals, he actually does have a jewel embedded in his crown, the top of his head. Furthermore, this jewel is not just a beautiful or extraordinary jewel, it's a wish-fulfilling jewel, which means that everything he wants or needs for himself or his people appears instantly without any effort required other than wishing for it through the force of this jewel. So therefore, the light radiating downwards to the Naga realm and touching the jewel of Jewel on Crown caused the prosperity, the wealth, and the possessions of the Nagas in the form of light to be reflected back and to appear in Tibet. And that was when Tibet began to be in its wealth like a Naga realm. Well, this, Rinpoche said, begs an obvious question. Since Tibet is now a relatively impoverished country, you might ask, well, where's all that Naga prosperity now? And Rinpoche said it is present in good times, when the merit of beings allows it to be present, it is present, and when the merit of beings does not allow it to be present, it isn't present. The light rays reflected by the Mantradaran king's mirror did not only flow upward and downward, they also radiated into the sky, the horizon. And they caused the wealth of a third type of being to be attracted. Now, this type of being is called Nyen in Tibetan, which, as it's usually spelled, means stern one. Rinpoche says there's another spelling of it where you add an E to it, which would be pronounced almost the same way, which would turn it into friend. And traditionally, we regard these beings as friendly, as helpful. They're also, however, quite stern. And what they are, what nyens are, is technically, Rinpoche said, among the 6 realms, you would describe them as a type of deva or god that lives in our environment, such as in Tibet. Species-wise, because species and realm classification are distinct, species-wise, they would be classified as a type of yaksha or goblin. And because they are a type of yaksha, they are very wealthy, as yakshas tend to be. So through the reflection of the light rays to the realm of the stern ones or the nyen, and famous ones among these would be the great Nyen Tangla, and especially in the case of prosperity, Majal Pomra. And so this caused the prosperity, possessions, and wealth of the Nyens to come to Tibet. And that's when the Tibetan, land of Tibet, began to be like the realm of the Nyens. The next thing that happened, or this could be simultaneous, the light rays radiated to the east and to the eastern continent and to the eastern side of Mount Meru, which would mean it would have to go north. But anyway, and reached the realm and palace of the 4 great kings. We're always talking about Vaishravana, who will come up again in a minute. Well, there's one on each of the 4 sides of Mount Meru at the top of the 4 steps. So the one in the east is called Dhritarashtra. And Dhritarashtra there are images of these four kings outside all monasteries, so you've probably seen them even if you don't know who they represent. And he's white in color, and of the four, he's the most, Rinpoche said, kind of handsome or pretty. He's the least scary looking, maybe. And so his wealth and prosperity came to Tibet, reflected back. And so that means the prosperity of the East, specifically the prosperity of Dhritarashtra, the king of the East. And the text says, and Rinpoche went on a riff based on that will be difficult for me to say because I'm not Tibetan. So that's when Tibetans began to display the signs of being of good birth. In other words, good ancestry and good looks. And so because one of the aspect of the prosperity of Dhritarashtra is being pretty. And then Rinpoche said, this is why Tibetans are so pretty. Aren't we pretty? And then he made a face, and meanwhile I was trying to look up the names of the kings because I always mix them up. And he said, aren't we pretty? Looking at other Tibetans and Tibetan speakers and then saying, well, maybe we're not pretty. Okay, this I have to say what Rinpoche said, but coming out of the mouth of a white male, it's going to sound racist, so I'm just a translator. I know this is not the time for me to be saying things about, He said, you could say that there's a limitation on our prettiness because of our original parentage. Don't forget, our forefather was a monkey, and our foremother was a demoness, a rakshasi. But so therefore, because generally speaking, we think that monkeys are a little bit prettier than rakshasis, therefore we say if somebody, in Tibetan culture, we say if somebody's born light-complected and with a long nose and a peaceful disposition, that they've inherited it from the father, the genes going all the way back to the original father. But we'll say from their father. And if they have a red face, a short nose, and short nose itself can also be a synonym for being grumpy. Short nose and an angry disposition, we say they've inherited their looks and personality from their mother. Okay. It wasn't. Oh, falling apart. Lama Karma says that I forgot to say, Rinpoche said that women are more courageous. He says he didn't. He said that because the original woman who was the first mother of all the Tibetan people, because she was a rakshasi, I guess we should say female, leads to the red face and courage, because rakshasis are courageous.
denhin, mese korazon, tenshin, tsupo chimbari, tiga lozo ga yong na, ten de yong, longji chiya tenne sayi. Tenne yeze de no ju so son tru, no jemi zong, no ji jabo, tenne jemi zong jabo na, tada shiva longji, ko jabo chimbo yima jansi, longji den ye, ko nor so. Tela tenne pela, ta dong, lo dong, ta saba, senjingi ko nor, mumbo yoba de tele so. No so yong na de, pela songa yeba, tang zing la tenne, ten gozo mumbo te tang ri. Ma zi tenne, pe de, pe ma pe yin, ten miji mumbo yongwa yong, tenne sayi. Ten yeze de song zo ka lan si tru ne, ten jabo jimbo nang tu si la po, tiga nang tu si de da, jiten ka na pancho ji shu de li, tiga longji den yin, ten pega meri na, kusare ayong tenne sayi. Pega meri de kusare mbaloju, kanyo mondawa samadawa ji, sinsigiri, maare, guru rumbuji somla, pega matamji, lojata pa shatari. Yana yung pachi ji jinga onki, tani tselo, tani mada pa tamji, tu mayin pa, chu jinga onda, rogori songori. Pachi zi mongwa tang, chi jing mongwa la tani, songori. Rongi yana lojata pa, shatari songwa. Te no yen, tani papa, sedon ishi pada mi pando de no nero, tani songori. Tani pe kuse rewa tani sayi. Tani yeze de, tani so yado, so samga, ling tangche la tru, tani so dong sam jega tani, noje dabo namle, yong dong, panjo tamshi, yeze tiga yin zhong ne, te longchi tangchi pe dong ne, pe nosun pangwa tani sayi. Tani misa de, pe masa yeze de, jaga yudan chori. Yongu chima kasa, jaga yudan chori la tani, jaga ga chu nam tamchi, pe da jing zhong ne, pe tabari. Te pe chu la kawa yinba, yunsin, te murta su chu la makar na, jindri shu mari. Jindri riri tani pe ga, penta ta dong, ta chata su jing zhong, te sa la, panjo dong longchi, lu su la tuba meba, kawa chimbu ji ne, tani pe la, chu da jing zhong riri. O teni sayi, o tiga, misa da chu chi jing zhong andala, yantin pada meba yori. Pena pe la, pe trabata pega, nangyo padong, ke pate, pe yonsu traba, pada meba, samade, maji tongba, chu la kawa tong, titanda tani, kewi yin tong, tata mongba, jing zhong tongba, kadin la songre. Pe ya na, pe de sasha chu chong, angju shenpa chi rite yinayong, tongba chu sotara songsa, songwa, cha songwa songla manwa, dayin zhong taba tong, te nyansong layin taba tong, te nyansong longwa tene, rong rong tong tenpe, drebe nga song taba de, pe chipuri. So ya la tani songji ki tema yore de, ina te tamji, so rewa, cha hiwa tsamma to, cha songwa te, sangta yo mare. Nda tamji tene, papa jine zega, nda yin to, ti tuchi tong me long, so tata shiva yin, tene, koro, yongu ku jinde chiwa la tene, sangyo re. Nda misa re, sangyo ma chabari. Pena tenka ku taba chila sangla tona, pe kongshin yonga, shuji tamshi de, sawa nime pa, Tramame Patane, Yindro Tapa Katane, Kini, Sanji Mushapa, Mundu to Sanwari. Yinayon, Jibatamba, Saniki Sambachimbo Tamki, Kuzola Nisha Mazamba, there's a champion then Tamki, Yig and the Jig, but the nation only owned on Lapa San and Tavala Saba, Petavandi, Chuchi Yimati, Zonla Yondon, Mary Yona, Deji Palm Privaga, Nubashimbo Yabanda. And so Trividon, Drosumani, the kingdom, Sawatane, Majabu, Yombi Chabalatani, the Tamki Songri. Telatene, Tanakonsana, Peg, oh yeah, the Chula Kavato, Chuchi Jang and the Neta Patti, Telasonori.
Then, at the same time, the light rays radiated to the south, to the southern lands, and also especially to the great king of the south on the steps of Mount Meru, called, he's Virupaksha. And Virupaksha is particularly wealthy and has a lot of possessions and livestock and other types of wealth. And so all of this was reflected back to Tibet. And just as the light from Dhritarashtra caused Tibetans to become of good birth, the light from Virupaksha caused them to become wealthy. Rinpoche said at this point, it's important to understand that from a different kind or aspect of prosperity is reflected back from each of these directions. First we had from the gods above, then the Nagas below, and then the stern ones in between. Now we're going through the four directions and the four great kings, and then we'll continue with all of this. The light rays reflected to the west, and the lands of the west hit the great king Virodaka on the west slope of Mount Meru. And he also possesses wealth and prosperity. And that caused, especially, Rinpoche said, massive amounts of healthy domesticated animals, livestock and so forth, to flourish in Tibet, caused his wealth to come to Tibet, and also caused a greater fertility, so that the population of Tibet was able to grow as a result of that. The light rays also radiated to the north, and the lands of the north, striking the great king of the north, Vaishravana, who possesses not only wealth, but like those in the northern continent beneath him, longevity. And so because his prosperity was reflected back to Tibet by the mirror, by the summons, by the aspirations and blessing of Avalokita, this, from then on, Tibetans came to have long lifespans. Now you might ask, Rinpoche said, Tibetans have long lifespans? First I've heard of it. He said, actually, according to Guru Rinpoche, the natural lifespan of every Tibetan is 100 years. And when we don't reach that lifespan, it's because something has gone wrong. By gone wrong, I mean we've become subject to obstacles or other impediments. But naturally, we are disposed, according to Guru Rinpoche, and also according to the Amitai Sutra, to have a full human lifespan of 100 years. The light rays also radiated to the lands and islands and continents in the 4 directions and 4 corners, and reaching all of the wealth gods in all of these places, and all of their wealth was their prosperity was reflected back to Tibet, which further increased the wealth and healthy livestock and so on. And next we turn to specific lands in the various directions of Tibet. And this is important to know, because whenever we perform this summons of prosperity, we reenact all of this. The light rays reached India to the south of Tibet, which caused the Dharma, the Buddha Dharma of India, to come to Tibet. And that was when Tibet began to be predisposed toward, or open-minded to Dharma. Now this is very significant, Rinpoche said, because there is something unique about the Buddhism in Tibet. First of all, there have been countless individuals who've achieved supreme siddhi. If you think about it, a comparatively small country like Tibet, it nevertheless received a more complete set of the Buddha's teachings, the teachings of the Pratimoksha, of the Mahayana, and of the Vajrayana than any other land, and has produced more siddhas than any other land, even much larger or more populous lands. The Buddhism found in every other country is, by comparison, Rinpoche said, incomplete. It has less of what the Buddha taught. Well, why is this? Why should Tibet be unique in this way? It's really a direct result of the fact that, first of all, Tibet is the realm and the field of activity of Avalokita. And it's also a result of this initial performance by this Mantradaran king at the behest of the monkey king, at the instruction and command of Avalokita, this initial performance of the summons of prosperity, and all the continued performances and celebrations of it since then. So the summons of prosperity, including the prosperity of Dharma, which after all is it not the most important prosperity of all, is a very significant factor in the success in terms of results and the survival of Tibetan Buddhism. Because Rinpoche said, think about it. Think about the events of the 20th century. Tibetan Buddhism could have disappeared entirely. It could have been stamped out, totally destroyed. But it wasn't. In fact, there's more of it now. It's still there in Tibet, and now it's all over the world. Said, how did that happen? How did such a disaster and such persecution cause this form of Buddhism from this relatively isolated nation to not only survive, but flourish? Because of the blessing of Avalokita, because of the aspirations of that monkey and that Rakshasi, and because of the initial performance of the summons of prosperity, including the prosperity of Dharma, by that Mantradaran king. That's why.
Manja yobo tiga nada yoba thong melonga yela te. Te ye te tasiki yoda tori. Ya tasiki yote tensong kande lagu miki. Te longone te tasiki kansana jundro chimbo chimbo jakab chimbanda. Tiga kono kiwa te tasiki yone hongre.
De du so, you know.
Misad tieti tsangda mazi, misad len kesa jebu kasa, te tasiki jabodong, tombu chupa jab, tatane, onda dune, tasiki noyong se, te noji yong tabi, pet tane, onre. Ti noji len kesa jebu tusala, ne mani, ne zong se, rongi ga rani tane, ne ga tekachi. Ti noji, ta tasiki no zong, Arab sing da te kaso Arab ser te ne zog zong te zog ne ko zong se ne ko shan da mi zong te tang chi de ta zong zong se wa da ko rong no de chi ba da pa ba mo bo ye ba ta mi da rem ji pe le se tar da wa de len ki sa ko te so kong ko ta do ne ba da ten kan sa na yong ba do ni ji ki du ba le song re Lenke sasa tega machi maris, kongoro Rinpoche nangshu chiri. Tila tene pe gongjin yongla nyancha tong pe mongpo songwang to lapa de tai chi ga lopa ga chu te pe lo wone pe chu de sami ro la niyo kapsa la pe kong Guru Rinpoche nangshu pel jabo chenpo je samari kong tak tong zundru la tene taji jakang tamche yongde pel sa long re ten baze tata shubha kyanyi tene manchu jabu ka dada tong melo ye de tene jana go yodan re jana go yola ruwa la tene jana ne tar dong tan din ga misa mantu de ya de per yong re te la tene pe rong ga yina tazo zo ga mbo de yomi yomi ki yona yong zawa ne zo xie dong ten chin zo xie bi xie ri yoma re yona yong da gu namba na zo ba ganji yoba de tata te yong ta long so ka de yong ga lemba ka de ne song re cha yong te ne song re so mbi jin sing de pe ye na ma jo je ba de a de sha pe le be ka sa la te kong la pe yong zo ga ta ka sa na dong wang no ne cho de je ba de cha che go re kong cha chong re te kong ga cha yi ne the page and thing on the son of the summary. Jago yola, sawan yo maris. Tikas jago san mebanda. Chinting the son of the summary. Tino ye sapirta, Jano the paper castle, the castle, tanda, oh, sapentaga, so, Drunga chumoga. Chanchi sangres. Kanda sangres na tombo janyo truke hand here. Jambo yon trouble yana ja. Pada de lodin tami bipi tam lodu demba hero demba chat ores. Se tamante rongi sundona tumu niktelia sita wachi nipa. Tela tene kado yabo tene tredon kielo ro yambo tene pe nipa chamba ta denis ten tongal tene ronga pumbo kom da Jawi chungo te pe, tarung shiba ki nge kubi tuwa no iya, roa chimbo, chog rezi. Tela tene, te pa tong tangsi tenpe, ta rongzun da, saran tang ye da, lama tang rawa me pa yo zane, chanchi pelang yo rezi. Tela tene, chanyong tong songkong te, jana rezi. A tinkabu yena na, zangli yong la chaga sa rezi. Tusono tamshi ngone, yong da sama rezi.
Nashagimbe. The light went, I guess, west from Tibet to Persia, and causing the wealth of Persia, which at this time was one of the most powerful and wealthy countries in the world, because we're going back quite a far time. Rinpoche said, I don't know what Persia is like now, but in those days it was held to be the wealthiest nation, caused the wealth of Persia to come to Tibet, and that was when Tibet began to have that type of wealth. There are further accounts of the incorporation of Persian wealth and Persian artifacts into Tibetan culture. In the Gesar epic, Rinpoche said that when Gesar defeated a king of Persia, he brought the Z stones and Persian-style armor and other things back with him, causing these styles and these materials to become part of the Tibetan culture. When we speak of Gesar, Rinpoche said, you have to remember that we're not talking about an ordinary person. Gesar is held to have been the ideal human embodiment of military might motivated entirely by love and compassion, and is regarded as having been an emanation of Guru Rinpoche. One of Guru Rinpoche's continuing functions is to produce emanations to protect Tibet from perverted Buddhism and from invasion from the four directions. And so Gesar is held as, is considered to have defeated enemies of Ling in four directions. And accordingly, it's believed that whenever Tibet is, the authenticity of the teachings in Tibet is threatened by corruption or perversion, Guru Rinpoche will appear in the form of a king or monarch who will defend the teachings and protect them from that. The light rays also went, I guess you'd say, northeast to China, and bringing back the prosperity of China to Tibet. And here one aspect of that prosperity is mentioned, and another very important aspect, which is important to many of us on a daily basis, is not mentioned. It mentions silk, that it brought back the prosperity of silk from China. At this time, until silk was brought into Tibet from China, Tibetans didn't have silk. It says, I don't know whether silkworms are native to Tibet or not, but we certainly didn't know what to do with them. We didn't know how to make silk. So the use of silk, and therefore some variety in Tibetan garments, really was introduced from China, and therefore is regarded as part of our inheritance of prosperity from China. Another very important aspect of this is tea. Now, nowadays, we think of tea as a common thing. It's all over the world. But actually, if you think about it historically, tea began in China. And for hundreds or thousands of years, nobody else had tea. Nobody else grew it. Nobody else knew what it was. And certainly nobody else drank it. In fact, while we think of tea as very common in India nowadays, at the time of Atisha, and Rinpoche said for some time after, there was no tea in India. It wasn't cultivated and it wasn't drunk. When Atisha first came to Tibet, he was welcomed with a nice cup of tea. And he never tasted this stuff before, and he was so impressed with it upon first taste and probably that first hit of caffeine that he said, wow, this beverage is a sign of your tremendous merit. You must have the most astounding merit, because this is totally unknown in India. I mean, imagine your first hit of caffeine. It's totally unknown in India. There is a beautiful praise of tea. It's actually a tea offering liturgy that extols the magic of tea in a unique way. When the great Sakya Pandita, accompanied by his nephew, Chögyal Pakpa, visited the imperial court of China, of course, they were given tea. And in his praise of tea, and they were probably given really, really good tea, In his praise of tea, Chögyal Pakpa wrote, he said, "In the beginning, you were first planted and cultivated by an emperor who was Manjushri's emanation." In other words, this stuff is so good that only Manjushri could have come up with this. In between, you became the favored drink of all the intelligent, civilized, and scholarly. And now, anybody can drink it. And it has the same effect on all of us. It awakened us from the torpor of ignorance. Your color, your taste, your fragrance, and what you do to us. These are all unique. You are the source of the greatest delight to the mandala of the Buddhas, that is our aggregates and elements. You are the embodiment of the result of faith and samaya. May I never be separated from you in any lifetime. So Rinpoche said, he can, having, as he said, had a cup of coffee before this session, he really feels what Chögyal Pakpa meant. So that was the beginning of this summons of the prosperity of China was the beginning of silk and tea in Tibet. In Ashagine. Oh yeah. And on that wakeful note, we'll stop for this morning. Please join me in reciting the dedication and aspirations with the thought that you dedicate the virtue of this session and all virtue accumulated by yourself and all others throughout past, present, and future to the achievement of perfect and insurpassable Buddhahood by all beings throughout space. Yeah.